if this episode had a subtitle, it would definitely be Lost Footage. I was probably drawing for a good 20 minutes getting all of this detail in. I'm gonna get better at that. 100% promise. Guaranteed. This is the finished piece that we're going to be ending off with today. It is a portrait of a character named Selenian. Hey guys, how's it going? It's Frank with Readphone Studios. So the first thing that you're going to notice right off the bat that's different between the finished piece and this piece is the perspective. It is almost completely different. The reason for that is because I started off and I didn't actually really have a solid idea of where I was going. I just started drawing because, I don't know, that's what I do. Or that's what I usually do, but this time I started and I didn't really like it, so I switched over to something that I think would look better and kind of had more of a heroic ring to it. And so that's where this whole thing comes in. I started off with just a basic idea of what I wanted the scene to look like, which even in most other things that I've done, I think I start with really broad, or not broad, more really specific strokes. Like starting off with an outline of the city, or starting off with the exact placement of the character in relation to where they are, like in a forest or in a city, in a mountainscape, what have you. This time I gave a really bare bones approach. I tried to figure it out more as I went rather than figuring it out all at the front, which I think makes at least the foreground of this image really look nice, because I had a really solid idea of exactly in my head what I wanted it to look like. Whereas usually I start off with the broad entire image, getting in little details here and there, and I don't really have a sense of what I want to communicate or where exactly I want it to go and what details specifically I want to have in place. But in this one, it was beautifully easy to just get started and get to work. I started off by creating the platform that Selenian was, don't know if you'd call it standing, because Renian don't really stand, they kind of hover, so I guess the platform that she's hovering on. At first I didn't have a solid idea on where in the city I wanted this platform to be. I knew I wanted it to be somewhere that felt important, but I didn't have a solid idea of where exactly that was. So I had already figured out in my head for these characters in this specific region, what I wanted for them was to be the king's guard, like his elite knights. And there are 7 of them. They're sort of chummy pals. You know, they're almost the most closely knit group of characters that we've had, although I imagine there's probably some tensions that are fueling just below the surface. Not that that really matters for the purposes of this video. But what I ended up coming up with, and what you'll see in the next couple of videos, is what they do to serve their guard is they stand on, I don't know what you'd call it, it's not really like a banister, these outcroppings of the roof that jut out in 6 different directions, and then the 7th one just hangs out on the roof. That one is the half god, obviously, because I want the half god to have more visual strikingness when I do end up drawing them, which shouldn't be too many videos from now. So as I went along, I slowly started adding more pieces to this castle temple thing. Not in this image in particular, but in the other images of the Renian that you'll see as they come. But for this one, it was really about figuring out exactly how much detail I wanted to have, which was a fair amount. I wanted it to look pretty nice, although I think the city came out a little bit lacking. I think it still looks good, but I think a little more visual distinction might have been a good idea on my part. I could probably go back in and change that, actually. Ah, well. So, once I've got all of the little block edges carved in here, I start messing with the highlights, and I started to think, what if this image was in the sunset? And that turned out to be a really nice effect, although the gradient took forever to get just right. It was definitely worth it. All of the little details, most of them were created by various brushes that I've made over my course of using this program. But some of them were actually just drawn in by hand, like there are a lot of scratches. Because I imagine that birds like to nest and hang out up here on these little outcroppings. And it's comfortable. So they kind of drag their feet a little bit, and you can see the remains of the fact that they've been there. But the most interesting piece has yet to come. Not the pièce de résistance, but this is the part where you actually start drawing Selenian. And the thing that's different in her image that I don't think I'm ever going to do again, probably at least not in this cycle, is having the main character of the image turned away from, I want to say the camera, but obviously it's not a camera, the perspective point. It definitely works for her, and I think it gives her the sense of isolation in her job. Because that's essentially what this is. As much as I think she enjoys the fact that she is seen as powerful and skilled enough to be part of the King's Guard, it does get lonely because they are, I've imagined, shuffled in and out, so there's never two people on duty, it's only ever one. And they're mostly there just to watch and make sure that nobody's coming in to the city in en masse. If there was one assassin, then the rest of the guard could take care of it, but for an army they would need to be, or they would like to be warned ahead of time. Which is why there's only ever one stationed at a time. Another one of the interesting things about the Renian, I think, is that when they hover, they have this little bubbly kind of glow under their feet, and I think that looks really cool. 3, 2, 1, sharp cut right in the middle of doing the city. Yeah, that's great. That's what I meant when I said lost footage, because I lost a lot of footage there. But that's not the point. The point is this nice little city that I've constructed. So this city in particular is called Zealous. Zealous is the name of the country that the Renian reside in. And I imagine that Ul just means new. So it's kind of like Newfoundland, New York, New Ontario, etc., etc. And that's because this was a city specifically built once the half-god was born. Because it's the half-god of life, and it spreads its aura all the way through the entire rest of the country around it. And the half-god is relatively weird, in all honesty, because it was, I'm not sure whether it was biologically born, but it was created of the earth. I think someone with life magic tried to create a golem to protect it or protect the king, and the life that this wizard imbued into it happened to be the life of a half-god. And that also happened to give it the half-god magic group of life. But, yeah. Not quite sure what to say after that. I like the way that the city looks for the most part, because I think the way that it fades into itself kind of gives it this peaceful, slumbering kind of feeling. Although it's hard to see right now, but when we get back to seeing the full finished piece. This city is definitely much like a standard sort of metropolis, like New York or Ontario or Vancouver. New York, Vancouver, and Ontario are like my only 3 points of reference in the entire world. Other than Venice, but this city definitely is nowhere in Italy, unfortunately, as beautiful as that would be. Maybe in one of the future expansions I'll do something like that, but this is very high fantasy themed in its art direction. So creating really complicated actual metropolis cities would be very difficult, I think. It would be hard logistically for them to do, because they don't have machines or mechanics or electricity. They've got indoor lighting, which is something that needs to be made note of, because it's magic lighting, not electricity lighting. In the next expansion, or the next cycle that I have planned, they are going to have actual regular light bulbs as opposed to magic lights. That's because it's going to take place in not an entirely different world, but just an entirely different version of the world. Now we're kind of getting into the end game here. I'm creating some clouds to just gently float across the sky, give more of that sleepy, going to bedtime atmosphere. The sunset, I think, definitely makes it overall. What I think I might do as I'm recording this, I think I might go back in and just darken up the city a little bit underneath the soft glow layer that I have for the sunset reflection, because I still think that it blends in to itself a little bit too much. So I'll go in and make some changes in that regard. Ooh, the sky was orange for a brief moment there. How fun. But yeah, so at this point it's pretty much finished. The only thing that I would end up going back in and doing is the detailing on the mountains, making it look a little bit more dirty rather than flat. But yeah, overall, this piece took me just over 2 hours. I think, if I remember correctly, it took me 2 hours and 1 minute. That was in the time that I recorded. I think I spent 20 extra minutes on it. Thanks, lost footage. Thanks me for forgetting to record. But yeah, so this is the final piece, and it's going to be one of the character cards in Temporal Shards. With that being said, this has been Frank with Readphone Studios. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, maybe subscribe. That would be pretty cool, and you get to see when my new videos come out, because I am going to be posting fairly regularly, especially in the upcoming week. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Signing out. Bye.